Hello, bonsoir, and welcome to the Get French Football News Show. I'm your host, Nathan Staples, and joining me this week, as always, are Eric Devin and Philippe Bargil. It was supposed to be another joyous Easter weekend in Ligue 1, but sometimes things don't quite turn the way you want them to, really. We'll delve into the incidents of the weekend after the news. Despite a rollicking atmosphere at the Velodrome, a dramatic victory for leaders Monaco and Nice clinching Champions League football for next season, the big story in Liga this weekend was an unsavoury set of scenes at the Stade Fioriani in Bastia. Lyon's match against the host was called off after the fans twice attacked opposing players, both before the match and as the teams were coming off the pitch at the interval. Sanctions for the Corsican side, who have already been in trouble with the LFP on 3 prior occasions this season, are forthcoming, but are sure to be heavy, perhaps in the excess of a stadium closure that happened in 2015 that saw the team forced to play home matches on the mainland behind closed doors. On to the results now, and on Friday, Paris Saint-Germain kept up the pressure on Monaco in a feisty 2-0 win at Angers, with Angel Di Maria recording a double. Nice clinched third place in Saturday's early match with a come-from-behind win over Nancy at the Allianz Riviera, with Jean-Michel Seri leading the way, scoring from the spot, and again late on for a 3-1 win. In the multiplex, Alexandre Mendy started for Guingamp for the first time in the league since December and notched a crucial goal in a 2-1 win over Toulouse. Metz will be frustrated to drop points at home to Caen after a late equaliser from Ronnie Rodelin that saw their match end 2-2. But the two teams weren't the only sides in the bottom 8 to take any points this weekend. Meaning that what had looked a disappointing result may be a blessing in disguise. Also on Saturday, Montpellier all but sealed their safety with a 2-0 win at home to Lorient, although not for the lack of trying on the part of the visitors, as Laurent Pionnier was superb in goal for La Payade to preserve a clean sheet. Rennes earned a surprising 2-0 win over Lille at home, and Saturday's late match saw Monaco host Dijon, with the hosts going behind early before a pair of free kicks from substitute Radamel Falcao saw the leaders earn vital 3 points, 2-1. Bordeaux won at Nantes on Sunday afternoon, Younes Sankharé scoring for the third time in 5 matches to give Les Girondins a vital win to keep their grip on 5th place. Sunday's late match saw Marseille turn in a rampant performance against visiting Saint-Etienne, a 4-0 win punctuated by 2 goals and an assist from Florian Thauvin. In Ligue 2, Brest may have one hand on the title after their win at Niort pulled them 4 points clear at the top, while scrappy Nîmes won yet again, taking advantage of a shock loss by Reims at bottom side Stade Lavallois to go third, although Strasbourg can go second with a win at home to Ajaccio this evening. And that's all for the news. But remember, for all the latest, head on over to our website at www.getfootballnewsfrance.com and follow us on Twitter at GFFN. We start this week, unsurprisingly, in Corsica after the ugly scenes that saw the game between Bastia and Lyon postponed. The away side's players were attacked by Bastia ultras during the warm-up, which delayed the kickoff for an hour before another melee occurred at half-time, which even involved a steward throwing a kick at a Lyon substitute. Philip, enough is enough, really, isn't it, with Bastia this season?
Sometimes I really do feel for this for this club. I honestly believe that the ones at fault are the 20 or 50 odd. We're not even quite sure how many of them. And the supporters group is called Bastia 1905, which is supposed to be situated on the east stand. So it always is in the same stand. And if you can't just do a pre-match warm-up, and yes, maybe not every shot was spot on from Memphis Depay, and sometimes they would end in the crowd, basically. But I think on the one hand, you've got this very nasty supporters group who think they own the place, which they probably do. I mean, they're probably like the local henchmen who everybody respects and stuff. But in reality, everybody hates them. But fans have had this experience with this type of supporters. We had a couple of Boulogne, and it was dismantled with time. So whatever they're doing very, very bad things. And I actually documented myself today. There were incidents against Nantes this season. There were incidents against Lorient, because I had never really actually heard of them, and I never thought that they would be capable of doing such a thing. Saying this, in France, you've got stadiums where the crowd is very, very far from the actual pitch, and that maybe may have some bearing on some more ones going onto the pitch and trying to intimidate professional players. I'm absolutely baffled. Whatever the sanctions as a club is taking against this against Bastia 1905 is just not working, and it really needs. First of all, I'm pretty sure Bastia will not play in front of a Bastia crowd until next season. And I'm awaiting not only relegation to Ligue 2, which they were already going down anyway, so it doesn't make much difference. I mean, we all, the sooner the better if they have this type of behavior. But a massive points deduction when they start life in the lower division, or maybe sending them to National or CFA to prove a point. But the club needs to answer about that. I mean, you can't possibly think that having a 20 group of thugs going onto a pitch and really, fighting professional players is normal. I mean, the club has to respond to that, and I think that's the most important thing, because you do have morons everywhere. I can assure you there's this kind of fan at PSG. I'm just going to assure you there's this type of fan at Marseille. But there's security around. And yesterday it was like, to fight against Memphis Depay or Anthony Lopez. Okay, go for it. It's like everything was okay. You could actually do that. I mean, wow, that's bad.
Let's keep the focus on the game on Sunday to start off with, Eric, really. And it was really ugly scenes, especially at the start of the game, and it was delayed for an hour. In all honesty, although there was obviously pressure from supposedly Bastia officials and the Corsican authorities to start the game, should it really have even started?
No, I don't think so. I think you had an already toxic atmosphere. There were already signs that the security in place, whether through design or through sheer lack of numbers, were unable to control the fans at the scene. And much as we had seen earlier in the season at Metz, if a crowd can't be controlled to a reasonable degree, the match officials, the match delegate, should have made that decision to call the match off, regardless of pressure from other outside forces, be they police officials, Bastia's team officials. I don't think it should have been started at all. The one thing, though, I do want to jump on this quickly, is that the irony of these fans, their actions are reprehensible, but if you think about them presenting themselves as fans of their club, even beyond sanctions, potential sanctions, but the way that they've hurt their club is almost immeasurable. I mean, let's face it, Lyon are obviously focused on their match against Besiktas on Thursday, so they travel with a squad that lacked Jallet, Tolisso, Lacazette, Fekir. Valbuena is injured, but this is about as weak of a team as Lyon could put out, given their usual squad of players. So if this match is rescheduled, which is probably the best outcome that Bastia can hope for, Lyon will obviously be putting forth a much stronger team in that event. Now, given that, they've really cost themselves a chance to get a point, maybe even 3 points against a very weak Lyon team, as a result of Lyon not being as concerned about the Europa League if this match is rescheduled. Personally, I think it'll be, at the very least, replay behind closed doors somewhere on the mainland, as we had seen in 2015. There was a match against Guingamp at that point in time that had been rescheduled and replayed. But yeah, the match shouldn't have gone ahead, and these fans have really done a lot to hurt their club's chances of staying up, which I think, even without a points deduction, are now probably in the single digits.
let's move on to the sort of the second incident that happened. Obviously, there was a relatively eventful half of a game that happened in between the two real incidents of Talking Point, and Philip, it was seemingly instigated by, at least again, Corsican officials mentioning that Anthony Lopez went to antagonise the fans. Although it seemed more like he was going to collect his water bottle. Really, a Bastia official went to confront him on the field of play, saying that he shouldn't be antagonising, and obviously the Portuguese took exception to that, and all kinds of things happened with a seeming a steward throw a boot at a player. It's madness, isn't it? Couldn't the Bastia official wait until they're in the tunnel when they're away from possibly inciting even more anger? Surely this could have been handled much better, and when we already know what's happened to start the game.
I honestly believe this incident is unfortunate. I honestly believe that the Bastia players were insulting Antonio Lopez for 3/4 of an hour, as they probably do every couple of weeks. Every time there's a goalkeeper, which happens all over. Which happens all over Europe. I mean, it's not like it only happens in Corsica. I mean, this happens. This doesn't happen very often in France because, once again, the fans aren't very close. But lots of insults are being thrown, and but it's just words. It's not, it's not acts. And okay, put yourself in Lopez's position. I don't think he's a hothead. I don't think he's a violent person or anything. But he got a flare thrown at him at Metz. He could have lost his hearing, which is quite important. He gets another incident at Bastia. He just oversaw Lyon Besiktas with a lot of crowd trouble. Well, then nothing happened, but it still wasn't a pretty scene. And he was insulted for 3/4 of an hour. And now there's this head of security guy or something like that who tells him, "Hey, be nice to us because we're Corsicans, and don't be a fool." I mean, the guy was fuming, inside, and you just let him calm himself down. I mean, you can't be mad for that long. And of course, nobody knows the words that were used, but I honestly believe that Lopez was just waiting, just needed a reason to hit someone. And the head of security was an absolute idiot of saying whatever he said. But I honestly believe it was
what do you mean Lopez needed a reason to hit someone?
Sorry?
What do you mean by saying Lopez needed a reason to hit someone?
No, I mean being really, really edgy. Like I'm not even sure who's the first one to have hit someone or not, but it must have been something that he said, and it just looks so stupid. But I honestly believe it was an incident, and that could have been avoided much easier than the first one.
Eric, let's talk about what happened after that, and that's that the players really knew that the game was really over. They went and sat on the team bus. They spent about an hour trying to sort out something. There was no real talks of anything, and then the game was finally abandoned in the hope that they could get the players away safely. It was then their bus, even under riot escort, was attacked by fans who were tear gassed as well. It's very unsavoury again, isn't it? And can you see any sort of light in the tunnel for the Bastia? I feel really sorry for some of the fans. We have a piece coming out either later tonight or tomorrow with a fan in this stadium with some quotes as well, and there was clearly a lot of upset around the ground, and it's a minority doing this, but it's such a tough thing to take in again for Bastia. But there's going to be huge repercussions to this one, surely.
Yeah, absolutely, and that is the thing. I was seeing a couple conversations on Twitter. Muhammad Ali, one of our regular correspondents, was having a correspondence on Twitter with someone who was in the stadium, and there were audible whistles and boos as a result of the 1905's actions. And I think that as a result of that, we should be well reminded to not to tar and feather all of Corsica or all of Bastia's fandom for these actions. Yes, there's a history, but much of this is centered around this same set of fans who occupy this Eastern Tribune, this Eastern Stand, and I think that there is some level of redemption. I think that the Furiani, has demonstrated in the past that it can have a great atmosphere without having the negative aspects that go along with it. If we think we can place the stadium alongside some of the great atmospheres in Ligue 1, be that Nantes, Saint-Etienne, Lens, who aren't in Ligue 1 right now, but again, in French football, the Velodrome, that idea of fan culture and being an intimidating place to come is a good thing. It's a powerful thing, and it can only serve to burnish the reputation of Ligue 1. But if what's coming out of a wider perspective on Ligue 1 at this point in time is the actions of these fans for, again, the 5th time this season, and there have also been enough actions in recent seasons to make this part of a larger trend. I think it might need to be something similar to what we saw with PSG, where the club, if the club have continual issues with a certain supporters group, needs to be banned. I know that the financial realities of PSG aren't similar to those of Corsica. Corsica are a club Bastia are a club doing things on a shoestring. We've seen that with their transfer policy. We've seen that with the types of players they bring in, loanees or veterans looking for another couple years in Liga. So we've seen that that's the overarching approach, is one of a club without much means. So perhaps the club's hierarchy is wary of the repercussions of banning 1905 or banning a large swath of their membership, if indeed not all their members are involved in this sort of behavior, which they obviously aren't. But maybe they're concerned about their potential reputation in laying down internal sanctions against the club, against the set of fans from the club. PSG obviously are a well-to-do club. They can afford to ban a set of supporters, even if they're influential. But perhaps PSG, the financial reality of these fans' season tickets would be too much to absorb. But the fact of the matter is, even if that were the case, that it being a potentially financial handicap for Bastia, I would argue that being in Ligue 1 versus Ligue 2 as a direct result of these fans' actions is probably much more of a powerful argument to be made in favor of very heavy sanctions against these fans coming directly from the club, rather than sanctions being administered from the LFP in the form of points deductions, stadium closures, what have you, from the LFP being administered to Bastia. That it's a matter of housekeeping for the club, and that they should make a stand, even in the face of some potential financial ramifications, to say no, this doesn't represent Bastia. This doesn't represent the island of Corsica. This doesn't even represent a majority of our fans. It represents, a small subset of, for lack of a better word, idiots who would prioritize being violent, being physical, being confrontational, being racist, in the case of the Balotelli incident, over the things that are good about supporting a football club. And that's really frustrating to see. It's the club has had opportunities to nip this in the bud, and they haven't, and now they're going to pay the price. I think that's what we have to take away from this. And it's frustrating to see because, like I said, under the right circumstances, Bastia and the Furiani, it's a tough place to go. It's a tough place to play. But when that line is crossed, and as it has been repeatedly, particularly this season, the club needs to take a look at itself, and perhaps relegation will be the slap in the face they need to nip this in the bud. So I think that, it's a frustrating situation to see, but the club is, the club has sort of dug its own grave in this matter, and it's hard to have much sympathy at this point.
You make a very good point about possibly Ligue 2 or even National, because Bastia did go in National in season 10-11. About Ligue 2 being much less mediatized or much less made public to the random football fan, which actually helps violent supporters groups of being actually pretty nasty. Did any of you two actually heard of any incidents this season? I mean, it honestly, it was a bit like a rude awakening to me. I mean, I heard of some troubles because otherwise I wouldn't have had that kind of those kind of incidents like playing a game behind closed doors or having a stand completely closed. But I mean, in France, at least it seems like a lot a lot of these of this supporters club bust in 1905 goes under the radar, and it's not really talked about at all. Which is probably, you know.
I would disagree. I think that the incident with Lucas at the beginning of the season when they were throwing the sticks from flags at him, that caught up a lot of attention. That was, I believe, the opening match of the season.
It was the opening match, yeah.
So again, you know, it's PSG's first match under Emery. There was a lot of focus on that. So that's something that I think garnered a lot of attention. Perhaps not away from France, but certainly I know that L'Équipe had covered it quite extensively, and it was, you know, it was broadcast on the carrier here in the States as well. The incident with Balotelli, I mean, that was, you know, was absolutely, you know, front page news. And then there was the recent draw with Nantes, where the fans had tried to. Oh, I'm blanking on what exactly they did, but they had attacked the team, or they had attacked. After the game, there was an incident with supporters, and there was a sanction as well. There hasn't been a sanction levied after that incident, I should say. Just the fact that this is the first match in 3 home matches for Bastia, that Eastern Tribune even been open, I think says all you need to know about the team's relationship with the LFP this season. It's a chain of incidents. It's not isolated.
Yeah.
I'd like to talk a bit about how harsh the LFP are. I mean, we all saw this fuck LFP Tifo last night between Marseille and Saint-Etienne. The Marseille fans had this very big, we call it in France, we call it a Tifo, where you basically have your own seat and you put over your head some kind of thing that and that makes a pretty good sign from afar. And it said fuck LFP. But I honestly believe that they're not being harsh enough on those kind of incidents. I mean, it was while reading your article, Eric, that I actually learned that Metz got their 2 points back, which I find completely stupid. I mean, what did they do? Did they appeal?
Yeah, they did.
And just like that, they got their 2 points back, even though even though Lopez almost went deaf. I mean, it's. So what punishment did Metz get in the end? I mean, did they a fine? That's it, and a game played behind closed doors. That's pretty.
I think there was a stand closure as well. I can't recall at this moment in time.
Yeah, well, that's not very harsh, is it? I mean, one of your fans did throw a flare on Lopez. I mean, if you're Metz, I mean. I don't think I would have appealed, but I'm not. I mean, and what about the guy who threw the flare? Did he get a stadium ban, or can he come back next week?
No, I think he had like a 4-year ban, maybe. Nathan, is that ring a bell?
It does ring a bell, yeah.
To me, it should be for life, but I don't know. I just find it very, very light punishment on Metz.
And yeah, I do want to talk about the punishment really that the LFP are probably going to come down. It's definitely going to be a fine. It's almost certainly going to be a stadium closure, possibly a points deduction as well. What do you think is the right punishment, Philip?
I would have at first this morning I would have said give the game 1 to Lyon 3-0, but again it's always the same problem. You always have a set of idiots being responsible for the image of a whole club. So I wouldn't. I wouldn't be against replaying this game in another venue behind closed doors. Even though I'm pretty sure Olas won't agree with what I just said. To me, both of them are not that ridiculous. I mean, of course, it's not. I was going to say it's not Bastia's fault that they have shit supporters, but it's also Bastia's organization. So I would probably go towards giving the 3 points to Lyon 3-0. and something like I would give a 10-point match deduction at the start of League 2 next season.
Eric?
And a fine.
10 points.
And of course,
Why wouldn't you?
it's not easy, you know.
No, it's not. But Philip, why wouldn't you apply the points deduction immediately? I mean, this is the thing. Do you feel that that's a stronger sanction than say, a 6-point deduction now that would effectively relegate them?
Yeah, because basically they're already down to me, so I don't think. No, I don't think it would be harsh enough to give them a point deduction for this season, because you know, it's not like they had it's not like they're shall we say 14th or something like that. They're already bottom, so it does basically send a message negating you, and the club is saying, well, we were going down anyway. So as a harsher measure, I would give a point deductions at the start of next season. Even though I'm not even sure you can do that. I mean,
well, you can. I mean, Nîmes had a point deduction, but that was for financial matters. But I mean, still administered by the LFP, even if it's a product of the DNCG's ruling.
Yeah.
Well, in that case, I think I would tend to have to agree with you, Philip. I think that if we're going on precedent, that in terms of replaying, in terms of replaying the match, I think you know, especially at this point in the season, that a walkover for Lyon is probably the right decision, and then the points penalty to be appealed next season. Obviously, perhaps at the very least, closing the East Stand for the remainder of this season. Perhaps playing. How many home matches does Bastia have left? 3, 2? There's only 5. So. There's, I mean, yeah, perhaps forcing them to play those matches on the mainland behind closed doors as they had in 2014-15. I think that you make a good point, Philip, about the LFP being
not harsh enough.
Sorry?
Not harsh enough?
Yeah, not harsh enough. Not only that, but also, I mean, to some extent, inconsistent. In terms of this, I mean, obviously there was an incident, I mean, much more minor, but there was an incident of flares being thrown on the pitch at the match between Nantes and Bordeaux as well. There were a few flares thrown near the goal of Cedric Carasso. There was a 4 or 5 minute delay in that match as well while that was sorted out. So it's not as if there's not a clear path for LFP to do here, but at the same time, it's difficult. You're right in saying that the other clubs that have received these sanctions, I look at a Metz, I look at a Marseille that have had issues in the past, Saint-Etienne, Lyon. They don't have that same consistent track record of incidents over a given season, over a given handful of years.
See, this is what I would give. I would give the 3-0 win for Lyon, because you could say, yeah, but it's because of the hooligans, or it's because of them. It's because of the club. It's because of the security. They were not firm enough on them. They know them. They know the East Stand has just reopened, and attacking players in a football match just should not be happening. I mean, so it is a club's fault. It is a club's fault for lack of organization, lack of I'm going to say concentration. I mean, to concentrate on your own fans' behavior, to be there and say, okay, this guy's a bit hot-headed. Let's keep an eye on him. So it is a club's fault. This is why they need to lose this game, and that they need a very, very harsh punishment and points deduction. And so they basically need to dismantle this supporters group, even though if it is probably the only one, because the rest of the stadium were booing them.
No, I again, you know, credit. And this is the thing, like it's not a Corsican thing. We've seen Gazelec, we've seen the other Ajaccio club, AC Ajaccio, have no issues. Yeah. SC Bastia, you know, I've seen a couple of their.
I'm going to be very harsh here. It says they have no issues, but they don't have much fans either. So that's, you know, I know it's a bit harsh, but yeah.
Well, all I'm saying, Philip, is that Well, now hold on a second though, because Bastia have been quote unquote the Corsican club because of a lack of success by those other clubs. I mean, even Gazlec being in Ligue 2, never mind Ligue 1, was a bit of a surprise. And the same thing with CA Bastia and AC Ajaccio. They don't have necessarily the same footballing tradition. It was a surprise. These clubs had gone beyond their we would see those matches, and you would see a good, exciting, powerful atmosphere, but without any of that negativity.
Yeah.
I do believe the club is almost a bit scared of losing this supporters club, because it is, they are probably the represent the Bastia Ultras. I mean, it is their ultra group, and I'm not even sure they have another one to compete with, which is probably I'm pretty sure they don't. So it's. I do believe that it's going to be dismantled. It's going to be quite hard on the club, but it needs to be done. It just needs to be done. And
so here's this, Philip. Though the other side of this coin, and I hesitate to bring this up, being a fan of Lyon, but is it fair if the other teams that are chasing them for Europa League to give them 3 points and not have to replay that match?
I think in the circumstances, yeah.
Well,
you think it is fair?
Yeah. I'm gonna give a different perspective on this, and
it can't be fair, Otherwise, it means it would have happened to all the other sides. But I get your point. Yeah.
Yeah, I think in the circumstances, you have to take the fact that we're running out of time to replay games, and do Bastia really? I know that it's a fans issue, but does that club that's shown the ineptitude to allow that to happen, do they really deserve the chance for them to get the 3 points? Is that fair on all the other teams around them that don't cause these kind of troubles time and time again? No. So unfortunately for those, whether Marseille and Bordeaux really were going to catch them, I don't think so, really. So I don't think it affects it enormously. But I don't think it's fair on. I think it's, with relegation being much more of a significant outlier, I don't think it's fair on those around Bastia for them to be able to get the chance to get 3 points again.
That's well said. I think that's a great way to look at it, Nathan.
Yeah, and just to really bookend this one as well, and it's a really sad moment for this club that does have a lot of fans that were really angered about this, and a club that's just been lackadaisical on this issue time and time again this season. Like Eric sort of mentioned, the Lucas incident, where the Twitter feed tried to question him diving at the situation, which is still completely absurd. The racist issue, where they were saying they at least at the start they were amazed by the accusations and bits like that. It just seems that us against the world mentality has finally caught up with Bastia, really, and it's knocked them in the teeth. And a points deduction, which really, well, even if it's this season or next season, that they're practically relegated with the run of teams they've got left, because the games against Rennes and Lorient are the home games, but they won't be played at home, so that completely changes the dynamic of those games. They're not staying up, and the worry for at least the fans that really love this club and really showed their support by booing those fans and showing the support to Lyon, the worry for them is that a big fine and the loss, combined with obviously the rightful getting rid of that ultra group, might sink them further into trouble in Ligue 2 next season, and who knows when we'd see Bastia again, unfortunately. But that's kind of the consequences of these kind of moments, isn't it, unfortunately? But I think it's time we don't stink in the doom and gloom too long anyway. Let's get back to some good things of Liga. And that starts really with Nice, who sealed Champions League football for next season. It's an enormous achievement. Their first podium finish in 41 years, Eric. How good has their football been this season?
Yeah, I think that it's ebbed and flowed in terms of its aesthetic effect. But I think that in terms of consistency, in terms of an overarching philosophy, even through a number of rotations of players, of different tactical systems, Nice have maintained a consistency, a defensive solidity, possession-oriented game, playing on short passing and keeping the ball. And it's been really impressive to see that, even with a run of injuries, even with Jean-Michel Seri being at the African Cup of Nations, William Cyprian, Alison Playa, Balotelli, Pereira, Paul Bice, the former Malang Sarr, Valentin Acerich, Younes Belanda. I mean, almost their entire starting lineup has suffered at one point or another with some sort of a significant period of absence. And to persevere through that is a real testament to not only the drive of these players and the versatility of these players to function in different positions, but to really the ingenious approach that we've seen proffered from Lucien Favre to be able to operate with a level of versatility that still maintains the team's overall ethos, the team's overall tactical facility and outlook on the way that they play the game. And it's impressive to have done this. I think also we look at the as well as Favre, as well as the transfers that have been done as well. I think that the hierarchy of this club, I mean, you think about losing your two leading scorers in Saint-Germain and Hatem Ben Arfa after a good season last season, a creditable finish fourth and playing some really attractive attacking football under Claude Puel, and also Nampalys Mendy going to Leicester. I think that's impressive as well. I mean, obviously that there's a financial backing to be able to afford the wages of a Dante, the wages of a Balotelli, but at the same time, to have the scouting nous to bring in the likes of a Seri, the likes of a Dalbert, for next to nothing. Seri was magnificent last week on Saturday for the second week in a row, and he's an incredible player, and they brought him in for next to nothing. And you think about the money that they've brought in for Nampalys Mendy was not a ton of money. I think it was somewhere in the neighborhood of 14 or 15 million euro. But the way that they've turned that around with these canny buys, Remy Walter last January, Arnaud Lusamba and Dylan Cyprien in the summer, and beyond the manager and the players on the pitch, the hierarchy of this club deserves a lot of credit for the scouting network they have in place and for their ability to convince players that there's a real project here and there's a real sense of ambition. And I think that's a really powerful thing that Ligue 1 over the past 20 years, let's face it, has suffered, right? I think in the period since Marseille won that Champions League in, what was it, 92 or 93, that there tends to have been just periods of, well, not close to dominance by one team. We had throughout the aughts, as it were, we had Lyon. Even if they weren't winning titles, they were still doing well in the Champions League, winning cups. And it's been PSG since the QSI takeover in 2011. And here we are now, 5 weeks from the end of the season, and Nice are right at the heels of PSG. They've kept at it all season, even through a raft of injuries and absences for other matters. And we think about where could Nice have been had they earned a couple more points, 4 more points, 6 more points along the way, and they would be in first. And I think that even if players do depart over the summer, Ricardo Pereira I think would be a big loss if Porto don't extend his loan or make him available for sale. But I think that this team is developing a program of sustainability, of consistency. It's come from the top down. Rivière, the president, deserves just as much credit as Favre, who has been unquestionably the manager of the league and the manager of the season in Liga. It's been I can't be effusive enough in my praise for the playing staff, for the manager, and for the hierarchy. It's been a complete team effort, and the results that they've earned are absolutely well deserved.
Yeah, and Philip, Nice lost. Eric mentioned that they lost a fair number of players in the summer, and we all expected them to sort of take a little bit of a dip with Puel going as well. Although they did bring in some quality players, but they've exceeded expectations again. And I mean, you look around the squad, you look at players like Suke, who's come in when Pereira's sort of got injury issues, and he's played superbly. There are players like Malang Sarr, Johan Cardinal's tributed. Mikel Bion in the last couple of weeks has scored a couple of vital goals when Player and Balotelli have been unavailable. It's been a total squad effort that's really a real good feel-good story, at least, of Ligue 1, isn't it?
I think the arrival of Favre has a lot to do with the general good attitude around the place, because Puel was having a very good season. It was, Nice didn't have a very good season last season. They already exceeded expectations last season when they finished fourth, because they were more accustomed to relegation / mid-table mediocrity in the past seasons. But with Puel going, it was maybe like the project was dying. But when Favre was officially the new Nice manager, was like, wow, this is like even better. It was a major coup, and the good work of Puel has basically been taken by Favre. So players like you mentioned, you had Cardinal, Malang Sarr. Even though he hasn't had as good a second half of the season as the first half of the season, still been very, very good. For someone who just started playing professional football, you have Cotiero, you have Seri, you have Cyprien, lots of Alassane Plea, lots of guys from the academy who are very, very good, very, very promising, and I honestly don't think they'll be staying at least for very, very long. And Favre bought this kind of scouting that enabled them to get Delbert and Pereira. I'm actually not even 100% sure that it was due to Favre or anything. But the squad was it clicked so well, and these are so exciting to watch. A bit less so these days. I felt. I didn't think that Saturday was the best game of the season, but it was still very, very good. It was still something that we did not see last season to challenge PSG. Let's face it, Nice, 5 games to go. Yes, PSG have a game in hand, which they're playing against Metz tomorrow. But Nice are just a point behind PSG with 5 games to go. This is massive. This is absolutely amazing. Really, 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 really amazing. And just to say, okay, we lost Ben Arfa, doesn't matter. We'll replace him with Bilander. Just bravo, and hopefully they get past the playoff, and they don't get pillaged in the summer. That's the first point. As they get through the playoff in the Champions League, if they do finish third, because they're really not that far from the top 2, and do your best in the Champions League group stage. I honestly love seeing French clubs that haven't been in Europe for years, and just being in the Champions League. I did honestly enjoy Montpellier's very, very short stay in the Champions League, because it was Montpellier in the Champions League, something you just don't see every year.
And looking at their season overall, we all had a massive amount of praise for their first half of the season, which was such a success. But Eric, they've only lost 1 league game this side of the 2017, and they've only lost 2 in all competitions. Obviously, the Coupe de France loss to Lorient. It's been remarkable how consistent they've been able to be over the course of a season. When, like you said it, when especially the issues to Cyprien and Player, we thought they would slowly fall away. But no, if anything, they've sort of steeled their resolve, haven't they?
Yeah, absolutely. The results they've had, particularly in the last month, I think. That win over Bordeaux. Bordeaux were, aside from the top 3, one of the form teams of Ligue 1. They had beaten them in the Coupe de la Ligue earlier in the season, and they and as well as drawn against them in the league. They were even in better form at this point. The only time I've seen Nice play the comeback win against Montpellier, who were in good form as well at that time after the appointment of Gasset. I think they'd won 4 or 5 in a row. How well they played against Saint-Etienne. That match was mesmerizing to watch. I know it was only 1-0, but the way Nice kept the ball in that match was simply incredible. You had seen it. I think what we're looking at is going back to that loss in Monaco in early February, where they were thoroughly outplayed. That was sort of the last we've seen of Malang Sarr to a large extent, and that's what knocked them out of the top 2. But whereas that could have been the start of a long and gradual slide, I think that's given Nice even more fire and more resolve, and that's what's most impressive, and that's what makes me think that they can keep this up. That they take a punch and they keep on ticking. Losing to Monaco is tough, but then you've got Saint-Etienne, who
it was Saint-Etienne.
That's what I mean. The match after that, it was a midweek match against Saint-Etienne. Every potential to be really tough, to be a draw, perhaps even a loss if Saint-Etienne could nick something. Instead, Nice totally dominated that match, and they've been rolling ever since. And that's to me is what's most impressive. Yeah, the second half of the season, great. They were in first. They played PSG toe to toe at the Parc des Princes. But I think for me, the second half of the season's been even more impressive given what they've had to overcome.
Yeah, and an interesting game against Paris Saint-Germain still to come as well, where they might still fight for second. But Philip, I do want to talk very quickly about their possible Champions League chances next season. It's going to be tough, especially if they do lose a couple of these talented players they've got. Do you give them any chance to maybe get to the group stages as a minimum, or maybe even progress from there?
Wow, this is like the most impossible question you've asked me since the start of the podcast, and there's been a few. There has been a couple of pundits who said that actually Cyprien being injured is good news because he will only be back fit in September or something like that. I honestly don't know. I think it'll be very, very tough with basically the pressure of playing twice a week and big games twice a week. So I see this as an experience for Nice, and that don't necessarily means they have to go very, very far. But Favre's an experienced manager, and he could be able to manage his players in such terms, especially in terms of physicality and stamina. Very, very important to do that, so that they're performing. It's possible, but I honestly not getting my hopes up. I just wish Nice are in the group stage, and that would be already, because Monaco and PSG are going to be there and are going to be performing, which is very good for French football. So I just say, just do it and enjoy it.
That's what I will send. That would be my message to them as well. I really hope they do make the group stages and have a right go of it. Is probably the best way to put it. And speaking of Europe, we'll finish this week with a look ahead to the European fixtures this upcoming midweek, and starting with Monaco, who hold that 3-2 lead heading into their second leg with Dortmund. Eric, are those 3 goals enough to see them through, with them obviously being away goals from Dortmund?
After that second half, I gotta say I'm not terribly optimistic. But given that, Dortmund do have to win by 2 goals. And I think that even with Fabinho absent and Sidibe likely still absent, that is a tough ask. I don't see Dortmund. I don't see Dortmund being such an offensive juggernaut as they might have been, at the end of the second half. I think that, for one thing, having Mendy back at left back is going to make that whole left side of Dortmund's attack less easy to go against. I think that Mendy is going to give, whether it's Pulisic or Dembele, whoever starts on that right-hand side, quite a bit more to think about than is Andre Raggi in terms of their ability to get forward. And I think that's necessarily going to pin Dortmund back a little bit. That said, I could still see this go, say, 2-0 to Dortmund, which would see them progress. So I think it's really important for Monaco to score, because that'll force Dortmund to score 3, which makes it a pretty difficult ask. So I think Monaco need to play from the off and be really aggressive from the start, and then maybe sit back a little bit. Bring on some more defensive players, bring on likes of a Nabil Dirar, and in terms of not protecting a lead, but absorbing what is sure to be a high level of pressure from Dortmund.
Yeah, and Philip, this will still be a tough one on Dortmund after the effects from last week. There was a great interview with Roman Bürki in German papers about him admitting he's still struggling to sleep, and it's still affecting a lot of the players. Excuse me. In the squad. Is that going to still be a massive factor possibly in this game that, I hate to say it in this way, but Monaco could take advantage of?
I'm not sure I understood the question.
No, that's okay. In the sense of, do you think the effects from last week will still be on Dortmund minds and maybe might be an advantage to Monaco? It's a horrible thing to say, but might it still be an advantage?
Yeah. That question is also extremely difficult.
I'm getting good at this all of a sudden.
It's I can't possibly think so. I mean, I still think that the Dortmund players don't even want to keep to. I think they just want the season to end. They want the Champions League. Of course, they want to win as many matches as possible. They're professionals, but it's still, we just can't really say morally how these guys must have been when they kicked off a game with their mate in the hospital, and with actually life-threatening action taken against them. So it's just so, it's just so hard to analyze, which is why I'm struggling so much. There was a podcast being made about this decision. Jurgen Klopp said, "I'm sure the guys who took the decision were not in the bus at the time," which is probably true. I'm not quite sure who made the decision. It must have been some UEFA delegate who, he was obviously thinking about the cash revenue and everything. But it does this type of decision. I'm not going to dwell too much on it, because otherwise we'll be there until midnight. It does seem like the players were not really given their own opinion to say, okay, shall we play on, or shall we play or not? And yeah, I honestly believe it wouldn't have happened in any other sport.
And
that's unfortunate.
And yeah, we hope that they can really concentrate on the game. It must be a really tough time for them at the moment, but we hope they can try and put on another really entertaining game. But we'll move on to the game in Europa League, Eric, and that's Lyon obviously taking on Besiktas. There's been no word of really what punishment the Turkish side may face after the crowd trouble in the previous game. But after the week Lyon have had of this and the Bastia incident, does it make it even tougher going to Turkey now?
I mean, if that's possible, yes. I think that we'd seen a really difficult situation to overcome from Lyon's perspective, even without the incidents in Bastia. And I think that it'll be tough. That said, I do think that given that some of Lyon's key players didn't make the trip to Bastia, they should be perhaps a little bit more well rested and ready to go at this Bastia team and with us, or this Besiktas team, with a level of drive and dynamism and resolve that will get them the result they need. I personally, I'd look for a score draw with Lyon to progress in terms of a prediction. That doesn't seem to be beyond the realm of possibility, given that Besiktas are still likely to miss key players like Quaresma and Abubakar. They also have their center back Marcelo suspended for this match as well. And Marcelo actually, was a huge threat from set pieces. I don't think that should be underestimated. Just how good Besiktas are at set pieces.
Very physical, big side, isn't it? Carry on, Philip.
I think Lyon will be up for it. I mean, even after the incidents of Bastia and of the first leg, I honestly believe that they could have this type of us against the world mentality, because let's face it, Lyon had the problem on Thursday and had some problems on Sunday. They were very unfortunate. I mean, it must have been a horrible week for everyone involved at the club, and just. I don't know. I think they'll go into Turkey and say, okay, you know what? They tried to attack us twice. Well, not really, but you know what I mean. We had two very nasty experience last week. We're going to Turkey with very little fans. Probably going into one of these, welcome to hell stadium, which it probably is, and we're going to progress. And I think they'll be very, very confident of doing that. First, because they do have better football players, and that that this type of situation sometimes, and depending on the personality and the way it's managed, antagonizes the club, and it could very, very, very well fall into Lyon's hands. And once again, I'd be very disappointed if Lyon were to be knocked out by Besiktas. Manchester United, I could live with that, but Besiktas, it's just No.
And just ready to
I'm
finish
talking
off
about the
this.
levels of club, levels of playing field, and no disrespect to Besiktas.
That's absolutely, that's
Or
absolutely
Manchester
fine.
United.
Yep,
Yeah.
it was disrespecting us at least anyway. Just to sort of finish this European talk, Eric, possibly 2 French teams in 2 different European semi-finals. It's a big week for French football and the coefficient, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that this is what we need to have seen from France after 4 or 5 years of slow slide down, that teams take these competitions more serious. I'm not saying the Champions League wasn't being taken seriously, but the misadventures, as it were, of PSG as the lone flag bearer in that competition were frustrating, and then the poor performances of likes of Monaco last year, Saint-Etienne and Lyon in previous years qualifying rounds of the Europa League. Now that we're seeing teams take it more seriously, I think that we're seeing France regain its rightful place as the 5th best league in Europe. I think that Benfica, Porto, sorry Thiago if you're listening, and Sporting Club de Portugal are all strong teams, but I mean, there's no depth in that Portuguese league. We've seen Braga on a handful of occasions, but beyond that, there's not consistently strong teams. There's not players leading those Portuguese clubs and going on to be huge successes elsewhere by and large, especially in the recent past. I think that France, given the cadre of young players it has, given how exciting all these projects are, Marseille, Lille, Nice, Lyon, all the recent investment in Ligue 1, the club needs to be and deserves to be considered not in that top 4, obviously. I don't think the tradition and money involved in those leagues is quite where France is right now. But given what a resource that those young players are, I think that France really needs this and really needs to use this as a motivation to kick on and put multiple teams in the knockout stages of these competitions with regularity, which is where I think really the league's level should be, given the resources that they have.
Apologies to Thiago on that one, but he might already be dressing up a table for you, Eric, to prove you wrong by his expertise. But we'll finish from there. That's all we have time for this week. My thanks to Eric and Philip. Join us for the preview show hosted by Eric on Thursday, and we will see you here at the same time, same place next week. A bientôt and goodbye.